Hello, 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 and welcome back to the Climate Crisis Podcast with your host, Sanika Kurode. Today, we're going to be talking about something really interesting and really colorful, and it's coral reefs, as you probably know from the title. So, coral reefs are a very vital part of our marine ecosystem, and I think they're very cool, colorful, and they hold a lot of great species around it. So let's get right into this one. So coral reefs are one of the most diverse ecosystems in the world. Like if you think about that, that is a very diverse ecosystem since it's in the whole world. And they're often called rainforests of the sea. So many of you probably know rainforests also hold a lot of biodiversity and they have so many different species in it. And coral reefs are basically the same thing, but for marine creatures. And you might not think that they are, that you may not think that coral reefs do hold a lot of diversity because most of them are just fish, but there's so many different types of fish that people don't necessarily just think about off the top of their head. It's just like, oh, coral reefs, fish. Rainforests are like monkeys and birds and frogs and all of that. But getting back to the point, coral reefs are just as diverse as rainforests. So, though it may be surprising to some of you, coral is actually an animal, and it's made up of hundreds to thousands of tiny coral creatures called polyps. And the image on the left here is the biology of one of those coral polyps. So at the top, you can see the tentacles and the mouth is right under them, kind of like a jellyfish or octopus. And then right in the middle, there is the stomach. And at the very bottom is the basal plate. So coral is sessile, which means that it does not move. With that basal plate, it does just stick to a surface like the ocean floor, and it stays there for its whole life. And the coral polyp excretes a substance that creates a calcium carbonate shell surrounding it. So calcium carbonate is basically just a very hard substance, and it basically just protects the coral from other creatures that are trying to harm it. And corals are actually symbiotic, meaning that they have a relationship with another type of organism where both of them are benefiting. And in here, coral has a symbiotic relationship with algae. And algae actually produces the color that you see on the coral. So corals are naturally, they don't have any color, and the algae that live within it give them that color. So if the coral is pink, that means the algae living within it is pink. And the symbiosis for this relationship, where both are benefited, is that the coral provides the algae with a protected environment and compounds that the algae needs for photosynthesis. And in return, the algae produces oxygen for the coral, provides it with food, and helps the coral to remove wastes. So they have a very nice give and take relationship. And the North Hawaiian Island coral reefs some more than 7,000 species of marine organisms. So you can really see how diverse marine coral reefs are. Here is an example of a very cool looking coral reef. Like this kind of looks like something out of outer space or something, but it's actually real coral reef. And coral reefs are actually very helpful for us too, not just the biodiversity of oceans that many of you might not really care about. Coral reefs protect coastlines from storms and erosion and decrease beachfront property damage. So basically, coral reefs that are closer to the coastline act as a buffer from waves and storms and floods. So when strong waves come in, the coral basically acts like a semi-wall, and the waves don't get to exert all their power onto the coast and any property that is along with it. So when coral gets decreased, that means the strength of the waves gets stronger. And the stronger the waves, the more erosion that it can do, and the more damage it does to our beachfront property. So coral is helpful to us as well as the organisms of the sea. Coral reefs also offer opportunities for recreation, like many of you have probably gone scuba diving or snorkeling, where you look at the coral reefs and the diversity that surrounds it. And surprisingly enough, coral actually can be used for new medicines. Scientists recently discovered that a chemical inside the coral breaks down the shield that bacteria use to protect themselves from antibiotics. So some very powerful bacteria have a shield, and antibiotics won't harm them as much because of that shield. And because of the chemical that coral has, it'll be able to break down that shield, and the antibiotics will again be effective towards the bacteria. So the chemical from the coral will be used as a helper drug that will break down the bacteria's shield and allow antibiotics that weren't effective before be able to help fight off these resistant bacteria again. So now that I talked about the great benefits of coral reefs and the basic terminology and knowledge that you need to know, I will talk about what is being harmed for coral reefs. As you may have already guessed by the title of this channel, climate change drastically affects coral reefs. As I spoke about in my first podcast that you should definitely go listen to after this episode, oceans absorb a lot of the CO2 that we release into the air, but this also changes the ocean chemistry. And corals are very sensitive, and even the smallest changes can stress them out. The increase of ocean temperature causes corals to bleach. Coral bleaching is when the algae in coral leave the coral polyps because conditions aren't suitable for it anymore, and it creates this type of coral. Because the algae provides the coral with oxygen and food, and it helps it to remove waste, the coral polyps start to die once the algae leaves. The algae gives the corals their color so that once they leave, the corals turn white, as you can see in the picture, giving the name coral bleaching. So this may look really pretty and all, but really this is just dead coral because the algae left, and soon the coral is going to shrivel up and start breaking once it does not have any more food and can't remove waste and won't get any oxygen. So the ocean temperature is very vital to the life of coral reefs. Some other things are changes in storm patterns. So storms can become more vigorous due to the increasing CO2 that we release into the air and the ocean chemistry. And these vigorous storms can destroy coral reefs by breaking them off because coral is a pretty breakable object because it's very brittle because it is just calcium carbonate. And so once stronger storms come in, naturally only a few would break off, but because these storms are getting more vigorous, a lot more coral is dying. And precipitation changes due to CO2. Basically, the precipitation becomes more polluted, and that can cause increased runoff that can contribute to algal blooms and more murky water. So this is an example of a algal bloom. As you can see, like the ocean is completely green and you cannot see below it. And basically what this does is that it causes the algae in the coral to not be able to photosynthesize anymore. And like I said before, the algae provides the coral with oxygen, and without the algae being able to photosynthesize, it won't be able to create oxygen, and it will therefore again leave the coral, causing it to bleach, causing the coral to die, and most likely the algae will die too because of this decrease in light in the ocean. And in order to stop this from happening, we need to stop our waters from becoming too mineralized. Algal blooms like this happen because a lot of cyanobacteria, which is another type of algae, get to grow a lot because of increased minerals in the surface of the water. And these minerals, you may think, oh, they're minerals, they're good, but because of this overabundance of minerals that are being put into the ocean, it's causing a lot of algal blooms. And like I said, that is damaging not just coral, but also other organisms that need sunlight to live. Increased carbon dioxide also reduces the pH level of the ocean, which means that the acidity of the ocean is increasing. And obviously, more acidic a substance is, the more like damaging it is. So when the ocean's acidity increases, so when the ocean's acidity increases, though it's not becoming like an actual acid that's going to burn somebody's finger off, it does decrease coral growth and the strength of the coral structure. As you can see here, this is a completely dead coral reef. You can see all the coral has fallen off. There's only like a few of them left, and they're all white anyways, which means they have bleached and they are going to die soon. And this is a cause of all those factors I said before. It could be through storms, it could be through increased runoff, algal blooms, but because of all the dead algae, because of all of the dead corals, I'm assuming it's more of the pH level and probably algal blooms that are causing the algae to bleach the coral. But the good thing is that there are some ways that everybody can help make sure that the coral reefs stay safe. Make sure to not touch or break corals when snorkeling or diving to protect these wonderful organisms. So, like I said before, coral provides recreation through, like I just said, snorkeling and diving. So when you do this, make sure you don't touch anything. Take pictures, sure, but like don't harm the ecosystem and just let it be there, let it be safe. You can also reduce the use of lawn and garden chemicals, and please do not dump household chemicals into storm drains like the gutter or the sink or anything like that. Dispose of it properly, because this can flow into runoff and that can flow into the ocean, and again lead to the change of ocean chemistry, which will cause it to become more acidic, causing this, as you can see right now. You can also choose sustainable seafood. Visit fishwatch.gov in order to see which type of seafood is sustainable. And basically, this sustainable seafood means that the fishers aren't fishing near coral reefs, because fishing there can cause coral reefs to entangle into the nets and cause the coral to break off when the nets are pulled up. Also, when boating, when anchors are dropped down, fishers can drop the anchors onto coral, again, causing it to break because they are pretty brittle when dealing with 1,000-pound anchors. So yeah, choose sustainable seafood. Learn about good reef etiquette and practice it when in the water. So in addition to just not touching the coral or breaking it off, there are some extra things that you may want to do, like make sure things that you're wearing aren't polluting the water and stuff like that. Some more in-depth ways you can help is to volunteer for beach and waterway cleanups. This will decrease water pollution and allow coral to grow more healthily, and you'll get some community service out of that. So if you're looking for community service, please go volunteer for beach cleanups, because they are very helpful and they're fun too in the summer. So grab a friend and go to a beach cleanup. And to see some more easy fixes to protecting the reefs, go to my Instagram at the Climate Crisis Podcast to see my posts and more content to follow. I will be posting about once a week. Thank you so much for listening to the next podcast episode. I will be trying to put my podcast onto Apple soon, so stay tuned for that. And I will also be posting more clips onto Instagram Reels, so stay tuned for that too. And please subscribe, like, and follow me on YouTube and Instagram. Thank you so much. See you next time. Bye.